Last Epoch is becoming one of the best games in the ARPG genre, and if you're interested in diving in, I can help you get up to speed on the basics without overloading you with detailed mechanics that you won't need to understand until you're challenging the Harbingers. Whether you're a new player trying out the game for the first time, or you decided to come back now that Last Epoch has had some time to grow and develop, welcome to LE for Dummies, the simplest guides in Last Epoch packed with only the information you absolutely need. Let's dive in. Like in any ARPG, picking up loot and refining it into the gear of your dreams is a major cornerstone of Last Epoch's gameplay, and I would argue that crafting is one of Last Epoch's strongest and most well-developed features. Understanding your crafting capabilities will completely change the way you progress through the game, and ultimately make you way stronger, way faster. Before we actually craft, you need to understand some basics about the game, or really one major thing: the importance of your gear. Gear is the single most important stat provider to your build. Yes, you will have a passive skill tree, and every skill has its own skill tree, but your gear will provide most of the straight stats that your passives and skills need to actually function as a build. Whenever you feel like your build is weak or you're dying too often, it's almost always a good idea to start by looking at your gear first and see which stats your gear is actually providing you. Identifying the problems within your gear is crucial. For example, if you have a fire build but your gear is providing a cold damage modifier, well, that might be why casting a fireball feels more like throwing a warm blanket over your enemies. If you're dying too fast and you want to increase your defenses, maybe you need to look at what resistances you have, how much armor, dodge, or ward is your gear giving you, or maybe you just need more protein. Whatever the question is that you have of your build, your gear can usually give you the answer. That's not to say that the passive skill tree and individual skill trees are not important. They are very important. They are what I consider to be the foundation that your gear builds upon, and if you build on top of a rocky foundation, the entire thing will collapse. If you ever need help determining which stats to look for on your gear, all you have to do is look at the tags on whatever skills you want to use. As an example, I'll take Flamery from my Spellblade. This tag says fire, melee, area, intelligence, and dexterity. So if you look at my gear, most if not all of my gear is giving me one or more of these stats. For defenses, there are generally three main rules I always follow when making a new character. Max your resistances, all of these right here, increase your health and ward pool, and make sure you can take a hit or you don't get hit at all. Basically increasing your armor or dodge rating. There are obviously more defensive stats and strategies you'll need to learn about once you get into empowered monos, but for the most part, these three rules will take you pretty far. Crafting is not deterministic, the final outcome of your gear is not guaranteed, but you can heavily influence it by using the crafting system to its full potential. So the number one rule to starting your journey in Last Epoch is to craft soon and craft often. Crafting in Last Epoch is incredibly simple, and it's widely agreed on that this is one of the most well-developed crafting systems in any ARPG. To start crafting with an item, all you have to do is bring up the forge screen with the F key, or by going to the menu and selecting it from there. You can also interact with the forges scattered throughout the world, but most people just find it's easier to press the F key. Once you're on this menu, plop in your favorite item and the forge screen will populate with crafting information for that specific item. You can see that this item here has 4 modifiers on it called affixes, 2 on the left and 2 on the right. Depending if an affix sits on the left or right is determined by that specific affix being a prefix or a suffix. The names aren't really important, what's important is that any one item can only have 4 base modifiers, 2 on the left and 2 on the right. You cheeky advanced crafters may also know of something called sealed affixes, which gives an item the ability to have 5 modifiers, but for now let's just work with the 4 base ones. The modifiers that go on the left and right are different than each other, but luckily you don't have to memorize where each modifier goes. If you find an item that has one of these 4 base slots missing, you'll see this icon indicating that you can add an affix in that slot. Click on that icon and it'll bring up your affix inventory, giving you a list of the affixes that can be applied in that specific slot. This inventory is filled with all of the affix shards that you loot out in the world. Affix shards represent one tier of an affix, and there are a lot of them. I have not counted, please don't ask me to do that, but there are a lot, and some of them are rarer than others. So let's craft an item. Placing the white item in the forge brings up its empty modifier slots, and that means that I can add whatever I want in those slots. But hold up, because there is one more main thing to remember when crafting your items. Each item has a set amount of what's called forging potential. Forging potential is a number that represents how much more crafting this specific item can handle. If you have more than 0, you can keep making changes to the item, but once you reach 0 forging potential, you can't make any more changes. You can never outright destroy an item, but you can brick one if you run out of forging potential without getting the specific stats you want. The forging potential system basically prevents you from taking one item and performing unlimited crafts on it to make it the uber ultimate Sword of 1,000 Truths Mega Nuke 3000, a weapon so powerful that you'll want to pass it on to your grandkids as a family heirloom. Each crafting attempt, anything you do to the item, will take away some amount of forging potential. That amount is rolled within a range indicated on the forging screen. So let's say I take this item and add a modifier to it. I hit the forge button and that modifier is placed on the item as a tier 1 affix. At that point, the forging potential used is deducted from the item's total. As a side note, the tier of an affix is the range that the affix can roll within. So when I place the affix on an item, the affix will roll within the tier 1 range and place the outcome on the item. Higher tiers will have higher ranges, so typically you want to shoot for the best rolls within the highest tier, tier 5. You can technically loot items that have tier 6 and 7 affixes on them. Those are the pretty purple exalted items, but you can't upgrade affixes past tier 5 through crafting. I still have some forging potential left, so I can continue to craft on this item if I wanted to. The next thing you want to look to do through crafting is upgrade the item's current affixes. Any affix can be upgraded to tier 5 through crafting, as long as you have an affix shard for that specific affix. Higher tiers means better stats, so I'm going to increase this affix's tier by 1 and lose a bit more forging potential. Once I'm finished crafting, either by having no affixes left to change or upgrade, or by having no forging potential left, it's time to decide whether to keep the item or not. Sadly, this item is not an upgrade for me, so I just need to get rid of it. I could sell it to a vendor for some gold, but a much smarter and handsomer man would tell you that it's better to shatter the item. Shattering the item will strip the item for its parts, giving you a chance to get back affix shards associated with the modifiers on the item. To shatter items, you need Runes of Shattering, another crafting resource that you loot from enemies, or you can actually buy these from in-town vendors. And that signals the end of the crafting basics. You now know the importance of crafting, the importance of gear, and how to use the extremely user-friendly Forge screen. Now it's time to get into the more advanced crafting mechanics and talk about runes, glyphs, and some of the more unique situations that you'll run into. I mentioned before that Last Epoch's crafting system is not deterministic, but you can heavily influence the outcome of your crafting attempts. The best example of that so far is by using the affixes that you want in open slots on an item. But Last Epoch goes another step further, giving you more ways to craft your items through the use of runes and glyphs. Let's start with runes. There are 8 runes in the game right now, with 3 more already confirmed to be introduced in the upcoming Tombs of the Erased season. To keep this guide simple, I'm only going to cover in detail the ones that, in my experience, are going to be used the earliest and most often. First up, the Rune of Shattering. You're going to be using a lot of affix shards, and even though shards drop pretty regularly, some of them can be extremely rare. So you're going to want to be shattering your items so that you can build up your crafting inventory with all the affixes you may need. This is actually a great habit to form because, for the most part, gold is much more common than specific affixes, so selling your items doesn't make much sense when you can shatter the item for affixes to fuel your future crafting. In order to shatter an item, you need a Rune of Shattering. It does exactly what it sounds like. It shatters the item, destroying the base and giving you the affix shards in return. The affix shards you actually receive correspond to the affixes that were on the item when you shattered it, but it's not a guarantee that you'll receive all of the affix shards from the item. The number of shards you get back from an item is randomly rolled when you click to shatter, so there is a chance that your favorite stat on an item may not become an affix shard if you haven't sacrificed enough goats to the RNG gods that harvest season. But let's say you don't want to shatter an item completely, you actually like the item, and would potentially use it if it had better modifiers on it. Well, the only way you can remove affixes from an item is by using the Rune of Removal. This rune will remove an affix from the item, but like the description says, it's random. So if you have an item with 4 affixes on it, you'll have a 25% chance to remove the specific affix that you want. Let me tell you, I've gambled many a time on this, and I think I've only successfully removed the affixes I wanted once in my entire Last Epoch career, so gamble responsibly. Probably the third most powerful rune is the Rune of Ascendance, which basically converts any item with forging potential into a unique item of the same type. So if you use the Rune of Ascendance on a sword, you'll get a unique sword. Use it on a ring, you'll get a unique ring. These runes are pretty rare, but if you have them, you can definitely use them to target farm a specific unique item. The runes of removal and shattering are really the only two runes that I use often, so I guarantee that you can get through most of the game without messing with any of the others. But if you feel like you want to get spicy, play around with the other runes and get a feel for how they work. They have a little bit more of a niche use, but if the situation arises, they are definitely useful. Okay, moving on to glyphs. Glyphs are used way more often, at least in my experience. There are 6 different glyphs in the game right now that directly impact the crafting outcomes of rolling affixes. The best and most used glyph is the Glyph of Hope. You're going to want to be using these babies every single time you craft. They are super common as loot drops, so you should never feel like you're wasting them too much. The Glyph of Hope gives you a 25% chance to preserve your forging potential when upgrading an affix. I'll repeat that. This is a 25% chance that you'll have a free upgrade to your item. Use them, and use them a lot. The Glyph of Chaos is the beautiful pinkish glyph here that gives you the ability to reroll an affix into something new. I actually use these a lot. Even if it is gambling, it's better to use the Glyph of Chaos to gamble on a bad affix than it is to use a rune of removal and gamble on completely deleting a good affix. Glyphs of Chaos do have a couple rules though. The new affix has to be the same type of affix as the old one, so a prefix will change to a prefix and suffix to suffix. The new affix will also only change to an affix that can be present on that type of item. So as an example, if you're crafting a sword, it'll only change into sword affixes. Next is the Glyph of Despair. This one is very important once you beat the campaign and start pumping into the endgame. The Glyph of Despair will give you a chance to seal an affix, having less chance the higher the tier of affix you're trying to seal. If it fails, the affix will upgrade as normal and you lose the glyph, but if you're successful, you seal an affix instead of upgrading it, making it the 5th modifier on the item. A sealed affix can't be touched after it's sealed, meaning it can't be upgraded or re-rolled. Whatever tier the affix was when it was sealed, that's the tier it'll stay at forever. Once sealed, the affix moves to its sealed affix 5th slot, which opens up its original slot for another affix. You can put a new affix in there and continue to upgrade the item. One thing to note about Glyphs of Despair, the affix that you're trying to seal has to be upgradable, meaning that you can't attempt to seal a tier 5 stat. The highest tier you can seal is a tier 4, which has a significantly lower chance to be sealed than a tier 1 stat. So yes, this is extremely powerful, but Glyphs of Despair are rare, so use them wisely. The other 3 glyphs are used less often, but they can definitely be useful. Just like with the runes though, I won't cover them here. It's easier to learn what they do after playing the game for a bit, and you definitely won't need to use them until you're an experienced player anyway. But that's it. That's really all there is to crafting, I say after making a 15+ minute guide to crafting. Using the knowledge in this video, I guarantee that you'll be able to beat the campaign and get well into the endgame grind. So to close out this guide, I'll give you a couple of my best tips for crafting and how to use it well. Something I didn't mention before because it'll become very obvious once you try, you can't craft uniques, at least not normally. One of the endgame systems that you'll run into eventually is this little golden nugget right here called Legendary Potential. If you happen to loot a unique that has legendary potential on it, you can take that unique to the Temporal Sanctum and do some legendary crafting. Legendary crafting is not like normal crafting. You take a legendary item with legendary potential on it, and another item of the same base type with 4 modifiers on it, and you smush them together. The final product is a mix of the 2 items. Basically, the unique item will take a single affix from the random item per point of legendary potential that it has. So for example, if the unique has 2 legendary potential, it'll take 2 modifiers from the other item. Legendary potential is very rare, but it is so powerful if you have a unique that powers your build. You can get up to 4 legendary potential, but in all my years of playing Last Epoch, I have only once dropped a 3 LP item. I have never even seen a 4 LP. Another one of Last Epoch's best features is that you can create your own loot filter in the game. It's extremely easy to use and it cleans up a lot of the craziness of loot on the floor. Don't be afraid to try it out and use it to look for items that have the modifiers you need. Even if you don't plan to use the item, set up your loot filter to look for specific modifiers and shatter the item to try and take the affix. That way you can start building up your affix shard inventory for later on in the endgame when you start using hundreds of them. If you don't know how to set up a loot filter, I'll be putting out an LE for Dummies video on that in the future as well, so make sure to subscribe to the channel. So now you must be dying to get into the game and start crafting on your own. I want to thank you for watching, and I hope that you found all of this information helpful to kicking off your Last Epoch journey. If you have any questions for me or if you feel like I've missed some crucial information, let me know in the comments. But most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you liked it, and subscribe for more content just like this. I hope you enjoy your adventures in Atera, and I can't wait to see what we talk about next.